What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you. The fallout from that brutal performance in Cleveland continues. And the presenting sponsor for today's episode of Hoge and Jahns is Visa, a network working for everyone. We are back home.
Adam, I'm just struck by the fact that it's only week 4 of what could be a very, very long season for us to cover. Yeah.
Who knows at this point?
So,
it
so
felt
much
that
could
way
change,
after week one.
You know,
then they beat the Bengals, and then Justin Fields is starting. And by the way, the Bengals went and beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I don't know, but all I know is it was bad on Sunday, and wrote my 10 Bears things yesterday. It was like deja vu. I mean, literally pulled up the same column I wrote a year ago. It was a little bit later in the season. It was October. But it was the same conversation. Play calling, quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver. I mean, it's literally everything is the same. It's the same exact stuff. How does this happen?
it's the same quote. I went back and looked at, this was in my 5 takeaways column up now in The Athletic, like November 17th, Matt Nagy was putting everything back on the table again, because 4-game losing streak, the offense sucks. He already gave up play calling, might need a new quarterback or return to Mitch Trubisky. It's like, here we go again. Here we go again.
So take that and think about that for a little bit.
It's tough. I don't know. And well, here, this is going to be let's be honest, this is going to be a very technical podcast. Okay, we have a guest coming on today that we've been looking forward to talking to for a long time. At least I have. I'm a huge fan of his YouTube channel, the QB School, because not only are there great breakdowns on players like Justin Fields, you actually learn a ton too, just about football watching these videos. It's JT O'Sullivan, who actually played for the Bears back in the day, a long time ago, but he was a Bear. He'd been on a bunch of different teams in the NFL. Was one of those journeyman quarterbacks, really the definition of a journeyman quarterback, but very smart guy, high school football coach in California at Patrick Henry High School, and there's a lot to learn from him. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. And then we're going to, on the back end of things, also maybe talk about our own reaction to some of what he has to say and just in general what should be done here, because it's a very, I think, disappointing situation for the Bears to be in already, as you said, Jahns, just here 3 weeks into the season.
It's week 4.
Sigh. A lot of sighs probably in this podcast, too.
I know. Sometimes you're just at a loss of words, but it's a podcast, and I have to talk today, so.
No.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's let the listeners talk, okay? So first of all, follow us on Twitter, at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. That's where you follow us on Twitter. Plenty of reaction up on, for me, NBCSportsChicago.com, and for Johnsy on theathletic.com/Hoge and Jahns. Please subscribe to The Athletic. Support the podcast. Support us. We appreciate all the ways in which you do so. You can also do so by buying our T-shirts on obviousshirts.com. They're there. We need to get some new ones for you here soon, too. So we'll work on that as well. And check out our YouTube page as well. You can be watching us right now on YouTube, the Hoge and Jahns YouTube channel, and we're going to be talking a little bit about YouTube, because same thing with the QB School coming up as we try to break down what Justin Fields is doing so far as a Chicago Bear. But you guys, we were breaking the voicemail line on Sunday. It's a good thing I think we've upgraded the voicemail line, because back in the day, there's no way. I think we had a limit at 100. And our producer, Kent Garrison, who's awesome and handles these every week, has informed us that there were over 150 voicemails from Sunday. Might be a new record. I don't know. I don't know if we track those things or not. I do know that on our old voicemail line, we couldn't even get over 100. So this is groundbreaking stuff.
Our old voicemail line was like the one you had to press the button and delete over and over and over. It wasn't, but the good old days.
This one has a harder number to remember, but it's a little bit more advanced.
Just save it, everybody. Save it.
Yeah, 872-221-0046. Here's what you guys had to say on Sunday.
Matt Nagy should be fired at halftime. This is a f***ing joke. He's trying to kill Justin Fields.
To Nagy,
Please give up play calling. If you do, ask Madden. That will give you better suggestions than Matt Nagy.
I cannot stand being a goddamn Bears fan.
Fire Matt Nagy. That's it. That's the voicemail.
Fellas, it's Cheese from Bucktown. I'll tell you what, Nagy's calling an absolute dog game, not rolling fields out, not getting any motion in there, abandoning the run game. It's unbelievable. He stinks.
Do not let Matt Nagy leave the stadium with a job. This offense sucks ass, regardless of the quarterback, skill positions, offensive line. Matt Nagy offense sucks.
Well, it's halftime, and it appears that Nagy's idea of an offensive game plan for Justin Fields is to get him murdered. What the frick?
Matt Nagy is a bad play caller. Just bad. This is ridiculous. I didn't think it would be possible for his job to be on the hot seat, but if this keeps up, I mean, just zero help. And he's...
I don't understand why Justin Fields is starting right now. If we were just going to leave the quarterback in the pocket to get annihilated, we could have started Foles for that.
Matt Nagy. We're in year 4. We are in year 4, and nobody knows what the goal of our offense is, what the game plan is week to week. Nobody can even tell. He is completely inept at every fucking step of the way, and he's literally going to kill Justin Fields.
I just want to let you guys know that you've got it all wrong. Everybody's got it all wrong. It's not about blocking or executing or tackling or any of that. It's about understanding the why. Oh my God. Dude, it's about understanding the whys, man. And when you don't have any answers, it's about looking at tape and then understanding the whys. So we're fine.
I actually waited until after the press conference today, after the game, to call in just to let the emotions settle down a little bit. And the only word that I have for this is pure ineptitude.
Matt Nagy, it's time to go. Don't get on this flight back to Chicago. You need to go. God, man. How many quarterbacks can you ruin?
Are you f***ing serious? Sorry for the language, but how do they expect us to watch this bull they put on the field?
Hey guys, I just have a quick question. Mitch Trubisky's gone and the offense still looks like shit. So I'm just really confused as to who I'm supposed to blame right now. Surely it can't be our offensive guru of a coach. So if you guys could just let me know, that'd be fantastic. Thanks.
Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace should be made to get up during the press conference and publicly apologize to Justin Fields.
Here's a good analogy. Imagine you were gifted or you inherited like a freaking Lamborghini or something, and then you get behind the wheel and all your friends are in the car, right? And then you can't drive a stick and you just grind the gears and go nowhere. That is our offense. That is Nagy's offense.
Hey, Bears fans, V-Man here. I think we need a new person to call the plays. Bear down.
John's at Bab, Hoge Cat, Kurt Geronimo back there on the sound machine thing. This is Robert Z. Dabrowski calling in from Garbage City, USA, a.k.a. Cleveland. And I'm not an entirely happy boy today, but the Bears lost. They gained fewer yards on offense than I could piss in a single sorry for the swear word standing section. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, boys. The smell of garbage has just filled my brain with garbage and garbage thoughts. But I'm going to remain optimistic. Week 1 for the new era, the Justin Fields era. The Lions will be better for the Bears. Let's get it next week. Chicago Bears. Bear down.
What else? Go ahead. I'm listening.
Oh,
Bobo.
I feel, Bob sounded broken there. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for all of our listeners. I had to sit through that.
The amount of family and friends that were texting during that game, from some season ticket holders, I'm sure you were getting the same. They weren't clean like some of those voicemails.
Yeah, all the bleeping, and I think Kent even missed a couple in there. So we get it's
those were the clean ones.
Those were the clean ones. You know what? You deserve an opportunity to vent. So there it is. All right. Well, as a couple people asked in there, they're trying to figure out who to blame. What kind of answers are there, if there are any? But look, this has gone on far too long with this offense. And it's another quarterback, a very talented quarterback that's here. You cannot screw this up. You just cannot screw this up, and it cannot look like that. It can't look like that with any quarterback.
And there are layers to screwing this up, right? There are the mistakes that Fields is making himself. There's the play calling. There's Matt Nagy's game planning. And then there's the whole freaking organization, Adam. I mean, this is not the first round quarterback that they've drafted. Like this, there are layers to screw this up. And I think we're just on the first layer or second layer of this.
But I think that's what's concerning here, right? Is it's sort of always been the elephant in the room where, as we've been talking about Justin Fields since they drafted him, we can't just keep going to that over and over and over again. So maybe we haven't discussed it enough, but the very well-known reality that the Bears don't really have a great track record with quarterbacks.
It's abysmal.
It's always been on the table, even if we probably admittedly haven't talked about it enough. Like,
they cannot mess up.
There is a scenario where the Bears mess this up.
See, I would like, I'm going to inject here. I would like to think that like Justin Fields might be just too good to mess up.
That's what I've always wanted to believe, I think. But then there's the tape, and this is what people aren't really going to want to hear about. It's what I'm writing about on NBC Sports Chicago today. It might be up by the time you listen to this. There are some things he's messing up himself. Now
but that's okay. He's a rookie, but
right. A couple things can be true here all at the same time. And number one is he's not being put in a great position to have success. That is by far number one on that list, and let's make that very clear. Now, that being said, there are examples on the tape where there's relatively simple reads, RPO decisions, things like that can be better. The timing has to be better. He's got to get the ball out faster. That is 100%. I was a little bit on the fence. This was something we talked to Nate Tice about coming out of the draft. How big of a problem that really was. I felt like a fair problem, but Nate thought it was a little overblown because a lot of the concepts at Ohio State were vertical. They required you to hold on to the ball long. That being said, he still, I think, got sacked 50 times for being that mobile and played behind a pretty good offensive line. So there were some warning signs there as well. And so I guess I'm not completely surprised that we're seeing some of that now that the speed is even faster at the NFL level. He's got to get the ball out faster. That's just one of the things. But he's also not being put in a great position to succeed.
No. One of my favorite stats of the many stats that were shared to illustrate the Bears' offensive ineptitude against the Browns was the one shared by CBS Sports. Did you see that one? I made sure to quote tweet that one, where Mitch Trubisky in backup duty managed to have the same amount of net passing yards as the Chicago Bears offense did in Cleveland of one.
Yes. That is just an all-timer. Do you know that they average 1.1 yards per play, and that includes the 16-yard run they had on the first freaking play of the game? So it's -1. It's not -1. It's less than 1 yard per play from play number 2 to the end of the game. That's preposterous.
What was the stat on the Justin Tucker kick? Was his 66-yard record kick more offensive yards than the Bears had against the Browns, right?
Yeah, it was 19 more yards than the Bears had the whole game.
Just
it's ridiculous.
We're getting JT O'Sullivan's waiting for us, but we've covered some stinkers, Adam. Some absolute stinkers. We said this in the press box in Cleveland. We've covered some awful football games, but that was by far, in my 10 years covering this team, the worst football game I have ever covered.
And there's been some bad ones, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember the Tyler Pelko game
Oh, wow.
The Chiefs in town, it was just bad. You've heard us talk about him and his breakdown videos. They're really, really good. JT O'Sullivan played in the NFL for a long time. He has a YouTube channel called the QB School, Patreon page too, kind of a whole community over there. If you want to learn about offensive football and specifically quarterback play, I don't think that there's a better place to go right now to just learn things. And his draft breakdowns were incredible. You heard us talk. If you're listening back in draft season, maybe you're new and you haven't heard this, but we talked a lot about his draft breakdowns because they were really good, really in depth, and specifically on Justin Fields. I think he did like 5, 6, or 7 videos on Justin Fields from his Ohio State tape. And sure enough, last week, plays against the Bengals, boom, up pops a 30-minute breakdown of the All-22 film. By the way, All-22 film right now is like gold. You can't get it. I mean, NFL Game Pass is a disaster. It's finally up. You can't even watch it. It's awful. So
I don't even try anymore, by the way.
I don't know how JT's getting it. Obviously, he's got connections. He's the man, and he can break this stuff down better than anybody. So we wanted to make sure we brought him on, JT O'Sullivan from the QB School. He's JT O'Sullivan, and we've been meaning to get him on the podcast for a long time. JT, you probably don't even know this, but you're already kind of a hero to our podcast listeners because of your love for Justin Fields back during draft season. So we talked a lot about your breakdowns, even though we didn't have you on, and we saw your breakdown last week from his first real NFL action. We had to get you on and talk about it. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Adams. No, this will be good, man. It's one of those things where it's being tested right now. I'm not gonna lie, but it's we're all going through it together.
Yeah, let's just start with the baseline if we can, JT. Can we go back to the draft? Let's go back to the spring and rewind a little bit. Tell us why you liked Justin so much. Then we can get to some of the concerns that we've all seen here early on. But it was narrow with Trevor Lawrence. You did ultimately go with Justin Fields as your number one quarterback. So let's just start there. The things you liked about him at Ohio State.
I mean, I just think he's the most dynamic guy in the entire class. And I mean, that's and you touched on it already right there. It's no knock on Trevor Lawrence. It really isn't. And, Trevor Lawrence is a special cat as well. But you can see the struggles that he's going through right now. I just think Justin Fields has the highest ceiling and has the capacity to be the most dynamic guy in that class. And that's saying a lot because Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, have some pretty dynamic playmaking abilities. And nothing against Mac Jones, and even got the dude in San Francisco. But the idea being that Trey Lance, and I mean Trey Lance is right there a little bit, but that idea that I think Justin Fields can come in there and stretch the field vertically with his arm, with his ability to spin it, and the athlete that he is, and the way that the game has evolved. I think he's got the most special skill set out of all those guys.
So all that said, JT, what would you do with him if you're Matt Nagy, if you're Bill Lazor, if you're John DeFilippo, and you have this immensely talented kid and you have to bring him along probably earlier than you want? What would you do with him concept-wise, scheme-wise, and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I would push back a little bit to bringing him along as early as you want. He needs to play immediately. That would have been my change from jump. The Andy Dalton, no offense to Andy Dalton, but, I just think when you look at the skill set, how someone's going to help the team, everything, he needs to play immediately. So that's the first critical error. From there, I think a little bit, and you can see it in the game plan this week, to me, a lack of creativity is not the right way to describe it. It's a thinking in a dated paradigm more than anything else. So they're running plays that any quarterback could run. They're running nakeds the same way that, the Rams were running nakeds with Jared Goff, where this is a different type of player. You need to give him creative capacity to block up an edge, get him running downhill. You need to take shots down the field with double moves and stretch a team vertically. You don't run RPOs with stick. That's what everybody does. You need to use his legs and his arm to be able to stretch a defense like they haven't been stretched before. So you really, to me, I would rethink a lot of how we're attacking the defense and not be able to use that, hey, if Andy's in there, we can run this play, and if Justin's in there, we can run this play, like the same play. To me, there are different skill sets that you can attack a defense differently. And when I turn on the film, I'm looking at a static offense, meaning that I didn't look at the stats, but I'm sure there's stats out there nowadays as far as there's no motion, there's no shifting, there's no creating that type of mismatch. There's a lot of static routes, meaning guys are stopping, whether we're running sticks or hitches or stops or whatever, where to me, I'm thinking Justin Fields he's like a air raid Y cross. I want guys running so he can see it and drive the ball down the field. And I honestly didn't have that much of a problem with how they did a decent job of using condensed formations to maybe run it and get creative in that regard, and then spread him out to spread the field and let him get the ability to run. But if it's not there, get out and run or create some quarterback runs. Just get into the flow of it, some perimeter screens. It just felt like everything was so jumbled as far as what they were trying to do. And when nothing works, it's obviously easy to say, yeah, that sucked. But to me, it just looked like an old offense with a really special player, as opposed to, hey, let's find ways to take advantage of this skill set.
Yeah, screen. That's a word I finally was able to write down with 3:43 left in the fourth quarter as I was going back through the Browns game the other day. Like, there's just not enough of that type of stuff. We'll get to some of the stuff here on what you think Justin can improve on, or some of the mistakes that he made early in that Bengals game that you broke down. But the one thing that stood out to me watching that video, and by the way, you should be checking out these breakdown videos at the QB School YouTube page. We can put the link down. If you're watching us on YouTube, we can put the link down here in the comments so you guys can see it if you haven't. But one of the things that really stood out to me, JT, as you were breaking down Justin Fields, is how many times that you questioned the concept that was being run, or the play that was being run, or one thing you kept saying a couple times was, this is a concept that works well against zone. And yet here they were running it against man, and everyone knew going in that matchup against Cincinnati that that's a single high team that plays a lot of man. So that just kind of stood out to me, that as many mistakes as maybe Justin was making, he wasn't necessarily being put in a great position at the same time. Is that fair?
I think it's totally fair. And even going to the more recent game, there are times where you would think, and it's easy. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to come off saying that Justin Fields shouldn't be to blame for a significant number of, whether they're sacks, misses, incompletions, all those things. And the play design, to me, is insufficient to be successful at the quarterback position over the long term. So easy ways, again, are things like this past weekend. And now it was late in the game, but they ran what most West Coast world teams would call dragon, or slant and a flat. And it was versus what looked like quarters or split field coverage. And he tried to rip a slant in. Well, that's on Justin Fields. You don't throw slants into that type of split field coverage. You need to throw the check down. And if you're calling plays, you don't call old school slant flat unless it's a JV football game and you're up by, 5 touchdowns. There's better stuff to put together. So if you catch that coverage, you have an answer. So yeah, is it on Justin Fields? Yes. But the play design absolutely feels like either they don't trust him to do more, or there's a capacity element as far as the design to be able to. Many teams will have options where, hey, if it's closed, meaning that there's a post safety or middle field player, we're going to do one thing. If it's open, we're going to do another. But when you run mirrored routes, there's just that begs to me as dated stuff.
In your excuse me, in your experience, then, is it too late? Because going back to the Bears' plan, they wanted to run this offense through what Andy Dalton could do well for Matt Nagy. And is it too late to change things up, like you mentioned earlier, for Justin Fields, some of the stuff down the field and whatnot, double moves? Is it too late to shift things for the other players, the offensive line, at this point?
I don't think it's too late. I think people love to overreact, right? That's half of what goes on in this sport and why it's so much fun. But even in that game, that past week against Cleveland, to me, it felt like watching the All-22, if you're sitting in the press box or in the coach's booth, it felt like those DBs were sitting on those hitches, stops, everything right there. So all you need is someone to say, hey, bro, let's dial up a double move. You can't tell me it's an NFL game plan. They don't have multiple double moves in the plan. Let's block it up with 6, 7 guys, 7, 8 guys, and take a shot on this corner who keeps squatting on us. And so those things are easy fixes. I think the harder fixes to me are where, okay, now let's get some quarterback run in there. Where to me, I saw a lot of what I would consider dated RPOs. Now that might sound like a oxymoron a little bit, but there are different ways to do it. So if you're making a philosophical choice to run those RPOs and your receivers are running what I consider stop route, anything that stops their feet. So they're not running a slant. They're not running a runaway. They're stopping their feet. To me, there's better stuff because you want those guys, you want your fast guys running away from the defender, all those types of things. And when you run those RPOs, now you're not blocking for the quarterback. So let's have some real quarterback run where we're blocking, because there's a couple plays where, the RPO is not there, and then he gets like 1 or 2 yards and gets smacked on the sideline. And there's another one where he's throwing it into the backside of an offensive lineman. Well, that to me looks like the offensive line doesn't know what the hell an RPO is, because you wouldn't chase that guy. He's chasing that guy on the backside, where you should know if you're playing offensive line and you run a lot of RPOs, well, if that guy's running away from me and we're running the run play the other way, the quarterback is throwing it. So I need to stay at the line of scrimmage. So it just looks like a jumbled mess of, whether it's they don't know what their identity is, they're not good at anything. To me, I would just be like, man, let's take advantage of what this dude can do. He can run it and he can chuck it. So let's find different ways to create those opportunities for us to take advantage of that skill set.
I'm glad you just said that, because there were a number of plays in that game Sunday where when I was rewatching it, I was having a hard time even identifying if it was an RPO or not, mainly because you usually look for the line blocking. And like you just said, I mean, there's some times where you couldn't even really understand what the offensive linemen were doing on the particular play. So I agree that there's a number of problems right now that they're, trying to work out, and they got to get it fixed in a hurry. But, when it comes to Justin, there was also, I can think of one RPO where he pulls it and then didn't rip it right away. And I think Darnell Mooney was running a slant, and it was only open for a second, but that's the NFL. Like, there was a window there to throw the ball. I do think that there is, and this was a criticism of Justin coming out, he holds on to the ball too long. I do think we've seen some of that early on. Have you seen it?
Yes. I mean, the straight up yes. Okay. I agree that there were completions that he left out there. Some of them resulted in sacks. Some of them resulted in hurries and completions. And I think we can all agree that that was evident even on his college film. Now, as a play caller, let's not put that cat in that position every series. You know what I mean? So let's block it up. Let's change the launch point and give him a shot down the field or something that runs into his face, as opposed to saying, okay, if this is the coverage, you need to quickly throw it and get it out of your hands as quickly as possible. It's just the RPO world is different in the Big Ten than it is on Sundays. Those windows are more condensed. And I think you're absolutely right that there were a number of opportunities. When I say number, I'm thinking 3 to 5, where he could have gotten the ball out of his hands quickly to a completion. And that's playing Sunday quarterback. And that obviously needs to get better, because there were completions that were out there. But again, they were on, to me, what I would consider static routes most of the time, like little quick hitches or stick routes where, yeah, if you're looking right there, you can get the ball out. What I wanted to see more is opportunities for him to drive the ball down the field. I can't think off the top of my head if there were opportunities where he did drive the ball down the field. Now, there were pass pro issues. That is a whole nother issue. But that's what I would say. Yes, that's an issue. And if we're designing the concepts, let's build it around his strength. That's not his strength right now.
As you watched the film of that, did you watch the game live, or did you just review it on film?
I've only seen the all 22. I didn't watch the broadcast.
So I'm curious, as you're going through it, are you, considering your experiences, like surprised that I think there was only 2 plays where guys were in motion, or the launch points weren't changed, like there weren't adjustments made as the game went on? Does that shock you, surprise you, and whatnot as you're going through the all 22?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily shock me. I mean, there's the example that people always use, and this is again a dated analogy, but Peyton Manning used to quote unquote hate motion. Like, he wanted to be able to see it and be able to get into exactly what they want. Well, I don't think anybody right now would confuse Justin Fields for Peyton Manning at the line of scrimmage. So and the game has evolved. Like, you look at many of the quote unquote high level offenses, there's a significant amount of movement and shifts. And sometimes for a younger guy, it can make things blurry. So sometimes you expect this kind of motion, or you expect this adjustment and something else, and now it muddies a picture, where that's part of dealing with that motion. And it does confuse the offensive line as well. If you do a lot of shifts in motion, sometimes they need to redeclare where they're going to. And there were certainly issues with the pass protection in that regard. So I can see why you wouldn't want to do it. But the launch point thing, to me, I don't have an answer for. I think especially when you start getting pass pro issues, you have to change the launch point. You can't let those guys who get paid to rush the passer just pin their ears back and go take shots at a rookie quarterback. That's too easy.
And there was another thing I had is Jesse James, who's one of their blocking tight ends. He played one snap the whole game. There's other ways to block it up and help that offensive line a little bit. So I think that's something they need to look at too. JT, I want to go back to something you said off the top, which was play him, because that's been a topic all summer long in Chicago. This plan with Andy Dalton to sit Justin Fields, and now they're throwing him out there. And he really did not receive, this is something we've been talking about a lot. He did not receive reps with the ones in training camp. And now he's just got to build all that chemistry on the fly here in the season, when during training camp, we're like, why can't you steal 3 reps with Allen Robinson? Like, get these reps in now. And they just didn't do that. So, and this seems to be a polarizing topic about whether you should sit these guys or play them, because there's examples on both sides of it working and there's examples on both sides of it not working. But why do you think for Justin Fields the best thing to do is to play him?
I mean, I think it's the best for anybody right now. I think Trey Lance is another perfect example. I mean, they're just, you're just buying time to a certain degree. And that's no offense to those other guys. They're pros. But you give up whatever you gave up to get those picks. And for that type of player, you're trying to develop them and put them in a position to be successful. And I think it's a dated paradigm to be able to say, like, hey, 20 years ago, everybody wanted to sit, look at Aaron, look at Patrick, those are one-off guys. I get it. But nowadays, those guys come into the league as prepared as ever, more prepared than ever before. They've spun it. They've played 7-on-7. They've been in RPOs. They've done all those things their entire professional career. And so they're more ready to play. And I also think the game is more college-like than it ever has been. So they're running similar schemes. They're not being asked to do things under center that they've never done before in their life. And so there's a lot of correlation to be why you should get out there to play. My biggest thing is just the best player plays. I don't understand. I don't think anybody, would look at some of those guys and be like, that guy is better than this guy. Like, this is not, rec soccer or Little League where everybody gets a couple innings. This is put the best guy in there, because I do think there are ripple effects in the entire locker room. Defensive linemen know who the better player is. They really do. And it impacts everything across the organization. And so everybody can feel that you're just biding time, that you're not putting the absolute best 11 out there. And so in addition, I think those guys are just ready to go and better. And so just as a fan of the position, I want to see the best players out there.
JT, I have one more for you. Just as far as like the individual improvements that Justin can make, like stuff that goes unnoticed when you're watching TV, like the footwork. I think in your Bengals review, you mentioned how his heels click a bit every now and then, and how it could affect his timing. How does he? Is that just a matter of experience and keep going through that in practice? I mean, how would you like to see that improve from an individual standpoint for him?
I mean, I think it's a little bit unrealistic to think, now that we're in the middle of the season, that a lot of that like technical detail is going to be changed. And now it can certainly be improved, but that to me is something that comes from being a pro, and that's all you do. And you spend your entire offseason with a quarterback guru, and you're working on your base, and those types of things get better and better. And I think you see evidence of that across the league. I immediately think of guys like Josh Allen, who make significant progress once they get into the league. And so I would imagine you'd see the same from this draft class. But for me, what I would want to see from Justin Fields immediately, we touched on a little bit, is just the timing and the quickness of some of those decisions to be like, hey, I need a completion. Like, I need to get the ball out of my hand. I got to protect my offensive line. I'm not going to take this big drop and wait on some of these throws. Now, not that you'll never do it, but just have a better understanding that, hey, this ball needs to come out quickly, not just for me to get a completion, but for me to protect my edges, for me to, do all those types of things that go into playing pro quarterback. It's not always about everything being perfect. You just need to get a completion. And that kind of like pro element of playing quarterback, throwing the check down faster. I can think of a couple times on Sunday, at least one time, where he got a check down knocked down. To me, that usually means you're pretty late on your decision making, that if they can react to your check down being knocked down as a pass defender, that things aren't going quite quickly enough. And so just playing it faster, I think, would be the immediate thing that goes into it. But those big, base footwork, people love to say, the arm action, any type of cleaning up, that type of stuff, those are off-season projects.
JT, when you put Justin number one, I know I remember watching the video, you said, hey, this is just, the guy I would want. It's not about, where they end up and fit like that. But obviously, once they get to where they go, that's a huge factor in how things turn out for them. So when you look at Zach Wilson in New York right now, who's not in a great situation, I think people are starting to say the same thing about Justin Fields. Some of the conversation we've been having here on this podcast right here about what they're asking him to do. How big of a factor is that, and what would you tell these guys and how they overcome that or fight through that until it is a better situation, because it's not guaranteed that it will be?
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the league. I mean, it's one of those things where I joke around, but I say this quite a bit. Some of the best advice I ever got was from Brett Favre, and he said, you got to overcome your coaching. And there's an element of that. Now, certainly there's some luck. You don't get to pick who you're drafted by. If you're a quarterback taken high, you're usually going to one of the worst organizations, worst teams, and you're a pro, and you got to find a way to overcome your coaching. And you don't get to choose, who gets hired next or what happens in that regard. And so there is so much of it is luck. The other thing that I would push back to those guys right now is you have to have the capacity to be really focused week to week, that type of improvement. But even to fans and people that care about these quarterbacks, like, we need to take at least, like a 3-year lens to this type of stuff. It's easy to overreact to a first start, to a first quarter of a season, those types of things. But, you're looking at which one of these, where are they going to be in half a decade? Is the franchise on the right trajectory, or are they making moves in that regard? And so it's obviously still up in the air, but man, the struggle is real. Sundays are different.
What do you remember about being a Chicago Bear?
I remember Soldier Field being a unique place. The design of it. I certainly loved the museum. What's the museum right there with the Sioux, the dinosaur?
Yeah, the Field Museum.
Yeah, that thing is beautiful. And then Lake Forest was pretty nice. But, I was living the extended stay lifestyle, so it wasn't that nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty far from Soldier Field. Pretty nice, but pretty far.
Yeah, a little train in. I love the city. I really do. What is it, Rush?
Rush Street.
Rush Street, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
and then they shipped you out to Europe, right? In the second stint?
Yeah, the second stint was really just kind of so I could have a Bears logo on my chest when I was playing over in Europe. There was no kind of intent for a long term. But it was the other thing I remember about that is Jeff Blake was a quarterback that was on the team when I was there. And so Jeff and I used to do make me sound really old, but the stair climber after practice. And we would watch Jerry Springer every day. And so we were going to go. I think Jerry Springer was filmed in Chicago.
Based in Chicago, yeah.
So we were going to go. We were going to get a limo and take all the quarterbacks and go. And I got picked up and went somewhere else like the week we were going to do it. So I was kind of bummed out about that. That would have been pretty fun to go like Kyle Orton, Jeff Blake, Rex Grossman to Jerry Springer.
That would have been wild. There's been athletes in Chicago who've played bouncers for him. On this idea.
They could have had all four of you guys out there. I would love to hear the stories of that happening. That would have been cool. How's the high school football season going?
It's going, man. It's pretty crazy right now with the whole COVID situation and what's going on with different procedures and all those types of things. But we've been fortunate enough to get all of our games in so far. We start league this week, so we just need to keep getting better, man. You don't want me to start talking in that coach speak. But.
No, he does. Because he coaches special teams for a high school around here. And his high school, this is Chicago history for you. His high school in Chicago just beat one of the most famous high schools in Chicago, Mount Carmel. Donovan McNabb, I don't know if you ever heard of it, for the first time since when, Adam? 1928?
It was 93 years, yeah. Yeah.
So he would love to talk some high school football with you, JT.
Well, you do teams?
Special teams, yeah.
Yeah.
Special teams.
Well, for the longest time, well, not the longest time, I've only been doing this 3 years, but we did the Pulaski Academy, only onside kick, never punt. So it was our special teams are a little bit of a circus, but it's a lot of fun.
Wow, I might have to pick your brain on that one a little bit sometime. Sometimes you get tempted to do that. Actually, our head coach he would have played with you. Jason McKee was fullback with the Bears when you were with them. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, it's a while ago, and Rasheed Davis is on the staff too. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. High school football. We love it here. We get it in on the podcast too. So, best of luck with the rest of your season as well, JT.
Appreciate it, fellas. Have a good one.
All right, awesome insight from JT O'Sullivan, who, former Bears quarterback for a minute or two, and it's great to have him on the podcast. All right, well, make sure you check out the Justin Fields breakdown at QB School. It's actually on Twitter at _QB_school. On Twitter, the YouTube page is the QB School. Check it out. And little teaser for you. There's going to be a video coming from JT on the sacks in Cleveland.
All 9 of them.
So get
9 times.
Get excited. Get excited for that.
No.
Okay. Well, you can still learn.
Well, if you learn, yes.
I'm gonna watch it for sure. All right. As painful as it is, we definitely have to dive into this stuff.
Your research.
We got to do our research. Thanks, JT, for the awesome insight. I guess it's now up to us, Johnsy, to kind of sort through that. We're going to create like a pie chart of the blame. It's got to be still like 80% on the offensive design, right?
Oh, 100%.
And the game plan?
Yes. You should do everything in your power to help your young quarterbacks, right? Everything in your power. I did. What's left to be said? We didn't see that against the Browns. We didn't see that against the Bengals. JT didn't see it against the Bengals. And at this point, that's the serious conversations that I think the Bears have to have. Like, it's like, what's going on here? How do we make life easier on our young quarterback? And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we talked about this at length last season with Mitch Trubisky. There was nothing wrong with making life easier on your quarterback. If you're moving the ball, it's all that matters.
I think one of the concerning things that I hope doesn't carry over, things were getting so bad there that in the fourth quarter, I noticed Justin just started locking in on his first read. And as you heard JT talk about, they were all just short, outbreaking routes, and the corners were just sitting on them. But there was a couple times where if you looked to the other side, there was a third down where the wheel route to David Montgomery was open, and he just didn't even look over there. And there was another one, it was like a slant to Cole Kmet or something like that. That was open, and he's just looking over at Allen Robinson the whole time. I hope that was just a byproduct of how that game was unfolding, and not something that starts to carry over. But that's where you start to talk about, these things having damage. And that's what you can't have happen. I mean, they got to fix this in a hurry.
They're saying it won't. It's one of those things that you just have to show now, though, right? He's got to shake this off. And the Lions give him a great opponent. They're a perfect opponent to have that happen. Even Mitch Trubisky's bounce back games came against the Lions. But I argue today it's more of a bounce back game for Matt Nagy, right? To make life easier for his quarterback, to help him out, to find a rhythm for him. He's played a game and a half. Have we seen Justin Fields in a rhythm?
No.
Maybe
since the preseason.
I would say maybe this, maybe the deep ball that was dropped by Allen Robinson, and then coming back to the Cole Kmet crosser, which was a laser right on the money. That looked pretty good. One was a drop, one was negated by penalty. It's the Bears for you, but get your QB in rhythm. That starts with the game plan. It starts with the play calling.
Yeah. I hate to be the guy of the negative stuff, but the guy of the negative stuff. What a phrase that was.
Okay, guy of the negative stuff. What do you have?
Well, here, I remember, saying this going into the Lions game last year. Now, it was later in the season, but the Bears had lost 5 games in a row, and here we were going, well, this is how you get right. At least the Lions are coming to town. What could go wrong? And then they blow a 10-point lead in the final 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And that's when it finally actually became a thing. Are the Bears going to make changes after the season? Because this has just gotten so bad. So, just pointing out, yes, great time to play the Lions. Could not be more perfect in what is a very hard schedule. That being said, the opposite, if you lose to the Lions, 0-3 Detroit Lions, kneecap biting Dan Campbell Lions, over-caffeinated Dan Campbell, kneecapping biting team, you lose to them. Oh, boy.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
One of my favorite points from our conversation with JT is what he brought up about the static routes, right? How they stop, the receivers stop their feet. That is such a good point, and one that cannot be said enough, because that was the Bears' offense and has been the Bears' offense, has it not? Like, we keep bringing up yak yards and whatnot, but the separation isn't there. The routes themselves aren't there. The concepts themselves aren't there. They don't facilitate that. And with Justin Fields, you would like to see him take those shots where he's driving the ball and there's separation and the guy can have some yak yards. Great point by JT.
But I thought they had all that speed.
Is that more of a shot at me?
No.
They don't use it.
I don't get it. What's the point of having all the speed?
Yes. Hey, and can I, like, you mentioned the screen game. We talked about the screen game with him there. Yes, they run a lot of wide receiver screens under Matt Nagy. We're talking about different screens sometimes here, right? Like, we're talking about like the ones where the offensive line actually moves and there's some misdirection, all sorts of things going on. Stuff like you saw from the Browns, stuff like you see from the Chiefs all the time. Are we not?
Exactly what you saw from the Browns.
Yes.
That's the most infuriating thing about Sunday's game.
Does not exist in the Bears playbook.
Is they were in the same position. The Bears were teeing off on Baker Mayfield. They couldn't control Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack from getting in the backfield. And they adjusted. And those screens killed the Bears. It was right there in front of you on the same freaking tape. The other team did it. That's what's so infuriating, watching what unfolded on Sunday. And there's just nothing. I finally wrote, now there is a chance I missed it, but like I said when we were talking to JT, 3:43, fourth quarter. This was the Bears' last possession when all hope was lost. They're going through the motions. Screen. They finally did it. And by the way, it went for 10 yards. 10 yards.
What was the down and distance?
So 10 yards there, 16 yards on the first play of the game. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're starting to get closer to 47.
Yeah. Wait,
the down and distance. It was 1st and 10. It was the first play of the drive.
Okay, good. Okay. Just curious.
And by the way, it wasn't blocked well. David Montgomery had to make a guy miss in the backfield.
Yeah, he does that.
At least the Bears have David Montgomery and Cairo Santos. At least they can say that.
Yeah.
Sexy.
All right. I think that's enough venting for a Tuesday.
We preview the Lions next on Thursday. Fishbane will be there. Fishman.
If you wanted the whys, this was a podcast full of whys.
Or what the hells.
Or what the hells. Lots of what the hells and whys. I think we explained a lot of whys, though. All right. Follow us on Twitter, at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. You can read my film review, as painful as it might be. NBCSportsChicago.com. Johnsy is on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hogan Jahns. Please go to subscribe. Check out the QB School and all of JT O'Sullivan's stuff. Breakdown coming tomorrow. On the sacks.
All 9 of them. 9 times. What movie?
I don't know.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, yeah.
Classic Chicago movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sure.
Now a meme.
No.
I have seen that. Now I think about it, I've seen that been going around on Twitter.
Well,
Kevin probably tweeted it out.
He does all the time.
All right, we're out of here. Thanks to our producer, Kent Garrison. Thanks to JT O'Sullivan for jumping on with us. We'll be back Thursday to break down our old friend, the Detroit Lions.
See ya.
9 times.
9 times.
9 times.